Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we also believe that when you drop into low vibration, you block your power. I cannot wait to get into this today with you and to illustrate all of the examples that I found to help drive that point home and to really help you to illustrate it in your mind in a way that helps you remember it, hopefully, when you're in, just the heat of life. I love sharing things that I'm excited about or loving with you. And the number one thing on my mind right now is how living excited I am to put my arms around my son. My son is completing his service of a church mission, and church missions are 2 years long. And we've been able to talk via video apps on special occasions like Christmas and birthdays and then also once a week, but we haven't had visits. Can you even imagine? Those of you that have done it can, but either way, I think that you can imagine how excited my mama heart is to be able to wrap my physical arms around my child. Like, it's the one thing that I'm focused on. I'm doing everything to prepare for him coming home. And I'm just like, I'm so excited. So that's what I'm the most excited about in life right now. And I just wanted to share with you that because I'm just such a believer in our relationships and in loving our people. And, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And that is definitely true. So just an invitation to whether you see your people every single day or you see them, less often, that as you gather, potentially even this summer and have family reunions, etc., to put your arms around your people and to fully, fully relish them in your life. And before we get into today's podcast, occasionally we have new listeners. And so I would love to just illustrate what this podcast is about and to also tell you a little bit of the history of this podcast. So this podcast started out when I was just really gung-ho and like excited about mindset and being able to teach people to kind of look on the bright side of life, etc. And when I started, I felt very compelled to begin this podcast. And I had a very clear prompting that told me, Mish, you're up against some mud, and because I was kind of experiencing some roadblocks, what felt like those emotional roadblocks that come when you just need to stop and listen. And I heard very clearly, Mish, you are supposed to share your journal from when you were 15 and pregnant. And I was like shocked. But of course, I listened and I did it, and I fully understood why. Because as we, were able to read through that story, we were able to like hold space for this young girl, because I was super young when I got pregnant, 14, and the rocky relationship. And it helped all of us. It helped me process my story. It helps you as the listener to find light in your darkness as she was finding light in her darkness, and how to find joy in the struggle of life, etc. So the entire first season is me reading my journal to you in a very personal way and sharing what I learned. And then season 2 is my husband's side of us coming together and some really big life events that happened for him that played a role in our coming together. And then season 3 is all about teaching us how we have more power than we think we do, and how our inner state determines our life. And so keeping a good inner environment and an elevated vibration helps create a life that we actually love. That's what the whole seasons of the podcast are about. And if you are or happen to be new, sincerely welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. All right, my friend, without further ado, let's jump into today's podcast. I was recently having a conversation with a few of my clients about dealing with the people in their life that are not aware of their vibration and that typically resonate or operate in a low vibration, and how my clients feel like these people in their life that are very close to them often bring unnecessary issues into the relationship or into the family, etc. And so we were walking through how our actions matter when we are dealing with something like that, a situation like that. And honestly, as we begin to sort of wake up to our own story and our own sort of side of the tracks, our own vibration and what we're carrying in our inner state and the way that that affects all of life. Most of the time what I see is that my clients start to become aware and they shift, but they're still living with people who they are still pulling for their awakening, if that makes sense. And so we do a lot of walking through, how to hold your own vibration so that it can help the other people around you discover what you're also discovering. So it was a conversation kind of like this. And as I was talking to them, I was illustrating how important it is not to meet their vibration. In other words, if they come at a situation or a circumstance and they have a very low vibration, what is typical of human nature is to respond in a similar vibration, right? Someone shows anger and then we get defensive or whatever. And I was chatting with them and talking to them about how to hold a high vibration even when. Because if we don't, then we slip into low vibration and then everything, becomes low. And when we slip into those low vibrations, we block the high vibrations that could be possible, that we could help bring our people up to. We block that because low vibration and high vibration don't exist at the same time within a person. So somebody meets you with low vibration, you want to do your best to maintain your state. And there's so many different ways to walk through that based on what it is that's actually happening. But essentially our conversation was about how we block what's possible. We block what's possible when we don't stay high. We don't allow the other person to even see or wake up to the fact that they are the ones carrying this vibration. If we meet them with "see, I told you so," or defensiveness or anger or anything, like we are overriding their ability to see themselves. Does that make sense? So this is the conversation we were having. And two of the women were sisters. One of them looked at the other one and she said these words. She said, "It's kind of like that Harry Potter spell where you have to stay happy so that the Dementors don't have access to you." And when she said that, of course, I know Harry Potter as well. Like I've watched those movies with my kids and, known the storyline, etc. I started to get so excited because I was like, yes, exactly. And she started to explain how when Harry drops into those lower vibration states, that it actually blocks him from being able to cast this spell of protection. In all of the training that Harry receives, he isn't taught to use shields or armor from the Dementors. He's taught to use his feelings, specifically to access the most powerful, joyful memory that he has and to hold it, to feel it fully, to stay in it no matter what the Dementor throws at him. The spell is called Expecto Patronum, and it literally cannot be cast from a fearful state. It can't be cast from grief or hopelessness or despair. It can only be conjured from a high emotional state. And what's interesting after looking into it is J.K. Rowling revealed in an interview that she wrote the Dementors during her own battle with severe clinical depression. She said that they're a direct representation of that illness. She talks about the way that the Dementors make the world go cold and gray and hopeless is synonymous with what she felt with depression. And the spell that she invented to fight them was her own survival strategy. Then she made it into magic and figured out how to create it within the Harry Potter story. So back to the conversation with my client, which I just like, imagine me actually fully jumping up and down because I'm such a nerd or kind of like geek out when really great examples illustrate what I'm trying to teach. And I love that she brought it up. And I just was like, exactly. When we drop into the lower states, we cannot access our full capability. And we had a talk about how being in low vibration actually blocks us from our power, from what we are actually capable of doing. Isn't that so cool? I absolutely love that. And so I came home and I was like talking to my son about it because I thought, I love this concept. And he's like, Mom, think about how many cultures that actually applies to. And so we were talking about the Native Americans. And, I want to be respectful because I know that this is a sacred tradition and that Navajo elders traditionally don't even speak about or say the word skinwalkers, okay? But this is a part of what the Native American people believe, that basically in the Navajo tradition, a skinwalker is understood to be a person that has crossed into dark power. It's a person who has broken sacred law and gained the ability to move in ways that shouldn't be possible, like shape-shifting or unnatural speed or the ability to appear where they shouldn't be. But here's where this connects to what we're talking about today. The protection against them, okay, is not a weapon. Again, it's not a lock. It's not a fence. It's not some type of physical defense. It's your own spiritual state. So inside the Navajo tradition, they teach that prayer, gratitude, community, ceremonial connection, staying in high vibration, that is the shield. The teaching is really that fear isn't just an emotion. Fear is what opens the door. And when you drop into fear, you become visible to things that prey on that same frequency. And the accounts from people who describe encounters with skinwalkers, they talk about how the moment that they stopped feeding the fear and they moved into prayer or into a different frequency, something shifted. That presence lost its grip. Isn't that fascinating to pinpoint a part of another culture that talks about, if maybe not in the same words, but that low vibration blocks you from your power? So cool, right? So I want to share a few more with you. This one is from the Shinto spiritual tradition of Japan, and its core concept is called kagare. And kagare is usually translated as impurity or spiritual pollution. But what it actually describes is the energetic residue left by negative emotional states. So cool, right? Like fear, grief, or prolonged anger or shame. That this residue stays with us, and it's not just something, this residue that can make you feel bad. It creates an actual energetic barrier between you and the divine forces or the kami, the force that protects and guides you. What? What? I think that's blocking us from our power, right? It's so fascinating. And so the Shinto tradition built an entire system of purification rituals that help address this, okay? So I love this so much because I teach that we need to tune our inner state. And I love how this is so parallel with tuning. They're teaching you how to purify this kigare out of your body so that you let go of those yucky residual feelings. And one of the primary rituals that they use to be able to cleanse is called misogi. And misogi is where a person cleanses their mind, their body, their spirit by immersing themselves in cold natural water, such as like standing under an icy waterfall. And that's the Shinto understanding for washing away the kigare, that spiritual pollution of low vibration, so that your connection to divine protection can be restored. So here's kind of a next level of that spiritual tradition. There was a guy, his name was Morihei Ueshiba, and he is actually the founder of Aikido. And Aikido is one of the most sophisticated martial arts ever developed. And the guy who developed this practiced misogi every single day. People who witnessed him described something impossible. Opponents couldn't touch him. Multiple attackers at once couldn't land a blow. He moved like he was operating on a different frequency than people trying to harm him. As I say that, I hope that you're thinking about your life and people who operate at a different frequency than you. And when we stay high, it helps us to elevate our technique. And this is exactly what Morihei did. He said that Aikido was not about fighting. It was about aligning yourself so completely that conflict simply couldn't find you in the same way. Don't you love that? Clearing the low vibration of kigare helped him to be able to have these superhuman abilities to protect himself. Taking notes? It is so good. So another culture that helps illustrate this same concept is from ancient Egypt. And the ancient Egyptians were obsessed with a concept called Mayat. Mayat was both a goddess and a cosmic principle. The Egyptians believed that your emotional and your spiritual state, or the quality of your heart, determined your access to divine power and protection. Not just in life, but after death too. So they have this ceremony that's fascinating. It's called the weighing of the heart. And when a person died, they believed their heart was brought before a divine court and placed on a scale. And on the other side of that scale, a single feather, the feather of Mayat. And if your heart was light, clear of fear, resentment, guilt, or low vibration, it balanced with the feather, and you passed into eternal power and peace. And if your heart was heavy, burdened by all the low vibration states that you had carried and refused to release, that your heart then outweighed the feather and you were consumed by a creature. What? But think about what they were really saying. What they're saying is that the weight of unresolved low vibration isn't just something that you feel, it's something that you carry, and that it gets in the way of a light heart. And that's something that determines your access to power, to protection. And even further, they fully believed that their leaders were required to personally embody Mayat, that their vibrational state was considered to affect the protection and the order of the entire kingdom. So in other words, if Pharaoh fell into corruption or fear or dishonor, that the land, the entire land, was believed to suffer. Okay, think about that in your own life. What is your land? And what is your frequency, or one person's frequency? What does it have the ability to affect? Everything in their quote, land. Isn't that so rad? Again, Fear and low vibration is the thing that weighs you down and cuts you off from that power, from that high vibration. Now let's talk about the culture of Celtic tradition. The Celts believed in an inner strength they called neart, a word that means strength, power, vitality, and courage. And the warriors didn't prepare only by sharpening their swords. They prepared their minds and their spirits through ritual, through story, through music, through connecting with the land and honoring their ancestors. They sought to enter battle in a state of fearless clarity. Courage wasn't merely admired, it was cultivated. The Celts understood that that was the source of their true strength. It wasn't just physical, that it flowed from living in right relationship with the sacred, with the land, with the ancestors, and with one's purpose. Just think about for your own life when we lose connection to what grounds us. Like that fear inside of us grows louder. But when we reconnect with what is sacred, our deepest strength becomes available again. I have a couple more to share with you because it is absolutely fascinating to me how many different cultures land on a very similar teaching. Let's talk about Buddhism. One of Buddhism's central teachings is that suffering doesn't come primarily from our circumstances, that it comes from attachment or craving and resistance to what is. And fear has an extraordinary ability to pull us into all three. The practice of mindfulness isn't about avoiding emotion, right? We need to feel emotion. It's about learning to experience emotion without becoming ruled by it. And when we have the ability to do that, clarity returns, wisdom returns, compassion returns. So again, when we're consumed by fear and attachment, we lose access to our clearest thinking or from our power. When we cultivate presence and awareness, we regain it. Another culture teaching something very, very similar. If you ponder what you might know about the Bible, and one of the most prominent themes throughout the Bible, over and over, God tells his people, do not fear. You find it throughout both the Old and New Testaments, and it's spoken to Abraham, to Joshua, to the prophets, to Mary, to the disciples again and again. Do not be afraid. Know how to keep your internal peace. Why? Because fear has a remarkable ability to pull our attention away from God and toward our circumstances. Think about Peter for a moment, and when he stepped out of the boat to walk on water, he was able to do the impossible while he was focused on Jesus. But the moment that he shifted his focus to the wind, to the waves, fear took over, and what happened? He lost the power. He lost the connection to the power, and he began to sink. The storm didn't change. Jesus didn't leave. Peter changed. His focus changed. His internal state changed. And his ability to keep walking by faith changed with it. I love the illustration of how our internal state really does matter so much. Think about when Paul tells us whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is lovely, think about such things. Where we place our attention matters. What fills our hearts and minds shapes how we experience life and what we have access to. We see again another illustration of how our low vibrations block us. They block us from our true power and what we have the capability of doing and accessing. I also know people who have incredible spiritual gifts, and these gifts, as much as they're associated with light, they're also associated with darkness. And it has become very clear, and I've had so many conversations about this, that when a person has access to gifts like this, that they also have an incredible responsibility to stay in an elevated spiritual state to help them to be aligned with their gift versus bringing them into dark forces, or dark forces even just getting in the way. So cool, right? Let's talk for a moment about the science, because you guys know that like I love also talking about our bodies and how science has discovered how our bodies function. And the HeartMath Institute has been studying the relationship between emotional states and psychological function for decades. They've documented heart coherence and studied it in depth. And they find that when you're in states of genuine positive emotion, right? Those high vibrations, gratitude, love, joy, compassion, that your heart rhythm becomes coherent, smooth, ordered, rhythmic. And in that state, your cognitive function, your brain function improves, right? The brain fog leaves. Your intuition improves. Your immune system strengthens. Your ability to make decisions and access creative solutions increases measurably. That sounds like an incredible warrior living through as we go through this world, right? When we drop into fear, stress, or anxiety, the HeartMath Institute also found that the heart rhythm becomes chaotic. And every one of the functions that we talked about previously degrades. It doesn't function well. Think about when you are in a scattered feeling state, you're also in a scattered brain state. That's just one example, right? When we're in those low vibration states, we are blocked from what we actually have the capability of doing. Your body literally has access to your own intelligence and to your connection to the divine. That's something that is my own personal belief. That's not something that HeartMath has published. And there is so much more science that confirms all of the traditions that we went over. And there's so many more in this incredible world that believe something very similar, that fear states block you. It's kind of like, imagine yourself in a forest and you had a map, and every single culture in the world was able to weigh in on the instructions to this map on how to get out of the forest. And aside from just the direction that it's telling you to go, the main thing that it tells you is not to drop into fear. And that is the very instruction that helps you find the next step forward on the map, to be able to move out of that dark forest and to be able to get somewhere else that you actually want to be. It's just fascinating to me that the knowledge that I shared with you today are from cultures that didn't know each other. They didn't compare notes. They didn't have the technology to understand what was being taught inside of different cultures that long ago. They weren't sharing texts. They weren't observing each other. They didn't have contact, but it's fascinating that so many of them taught a very similar understanding, that fear disconnects you from your power, and that high vibration is your protection. Our internal state is so incredibly important. And I love the way that it illustrates that it's our job to guard that state, to tune that state, to clean that state, to create the ability to step into those higher vibration states where we have access to intuition and wisdom and connection. And just literally, that's our highest and best. That is our power. I genuinely hope that taking a little peek at some of these different traditions helps illuminate fully how important staying in a high vibration is, and how when you do that, you have more power than you think you do. All right, my friend, I hope that you are jumping up and down as well with these illustrations and these ideas of comparing cultures, traditions, and even a children's story to really drive home the point that simply having access to your power is all created from your internal state. I hope that that helps you as you deal with personalities or people and circumstances and experiences that challenge you, that you will be able to stay in that higher vibrational frequency so that you can operate the best that you can, and that in the process of doing that, you elevate the people around you. If this episode was helpful to you, chances are it would be helpful to someone else in your life, and I would appreciate you sharing the podcast episode with them. Remember to make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast so that you don't miss the next episode. Until then, my friend, remember to guard your state, tune it, care for it, elevate it. Everything in your life follows from there.